Bladenboro, even now, right off downtown, is called Bryan Swamp. And you go to earlier records, that's been shortened. It was, before that, it was Thomas Bryan Swamp. Thomas Bryan came to Bladen County and got land grants at about 1735, which is extremely early, because that's literally when county was formed. Bladen County was formed out of New Hanover County, which is where Wilmington was. Wilmington was the biggest city in North Carolina until 1900. So I mean, it tells you the state took a long time to develop. But he was definitely one of the earliest. And Thomas, we don't know much. You know, if you go back and look at his records, his wife's never mentioned, which is unfortunately really common. All his children are mentioned in his will. His son Philemon is in the direct line. He lived again in Bladenboro. Actually was near Brown Marsh. And then Philemon's son William, Pond William, is the one that bought this property here. And again, we don't know what possessed him to move over here, whether he had a vision to make the pond or what. But yeah, I'll tell you, it was a lot of hard work. The other thing about the pond, I forgot to tell you this when he went down the dam. The neat thing when I was a kid, and Sally can remember it better than I can, but there was all the trees between the dam and the road. You couldn't even see the road. And it's very clear on the top of the dam, but when we were kids, it was more like a path through all the roots of the trees, and you just kind of could follow it at night, you know, just by feel. It was a lot spookier back then than it is now. A lot spookier. I mean, that's was I think was kind of the appeal of the place. It was like someone said, you know, it's not hardly even country anymore. We got it so civilized. So I think what we'll do is we'll go back down the pond. I don't know if y'all want to. I already told you a lot of the stories from the old cemetery. We don't have to necessarily go up there. But I did want to make sure you at least knew where the old cemetery was, because as you can tell, unless we had a metal detector and a piece of rebar, we'd have a hard time finding it now. But there were some graves in here that had a concrete top on.
How many graves do you think were in here?
Well, you can go back over there. Basically, the ones on this side of the tree were taken from there, and I've got records. I would say there was probably a dozen graves. Some children. Like I say, Pond William was the earliest. And Ellen Jane mentioned this. If you ever do any genealogy and I'm gone, I'll pass on the same thing that grandmother passed on to me. Those tombstones are not accurate. And I know that for a fact because I have the receipts from when the Pond William one, it was remade in 1900. Well, he died in 1838. Apparently there was no markers here, and we've got the records where they were shipped up from Wilmington, and the dates of death are definitely incorrect, and they'll really fake you out if you use that as your base data. It's not right. But luckily, we do have good birth and death records on all of them. Any, got any questions or anything? No?
Bryan found where he's sleeping tonight, everybody.
It's nasty. It smells horrible.
I think Bryan farted too, though.
The other thing, just to let you know, I mean, I don't think that this was even electrified before about it was right after the end of the Second World War, 1945. So just to give you an idea of when electricity was even in here.
1945?
Yeah, so basically this area, on the REA or whatever you want to call it. But it was still, you know, relatively rural, relatively late. I always thought the appeal of the place was the swamps kind of protected it from outsiders, so a lot like Appalachia with the mountains and all that with the roads and all. I thought it was neat when we used to come down here, it was all sand roads, and they would kind of like take a plow and kind of pull the sand up to keep you out of the ditches. And it was kind of tricky driving. You had to be kind of careful.
They grade the roads.
They grade them, but now it's so. All right, well, let's go on back. I haven't
My shoe.
find anything here.